lived our life? What if we lived our life out loud? What would that be like? This month, our theme is speaking truth to circumstance. And this is kind of like the phrase speaking truth to power. And what we know is spirit is the only power. So, what people really mean when they use the phrase speaking truth to power is speaking truth to control or to circumstance. So, power is a word that triggers many reactions in people. But what we know in science of mind is there's really only one power. And there's no need to speak truth to that power because truth and power are one in that spiritual realm. So what we're really facing is circumstances, the smoke and mirror of circumstance. And fear-based attempts at control masquerading as power. And those circumstances crumble in the face of truth. Circumstances are never the truth. And so this month we began by looking them in the face as monsters. And Reverend Rainbow showed us that monsters are not always what they seem. And we continued this theme last week with Reverend Kit as she led us in remembering and standing in the truth, as Shiva did by throwing himself under the blood-crazed Kali to bring her back to center. So today, what we're going to look at is what being an authentic, spirit-centered spiritual warrior means. So the wise warrior is focused and doesn't get ensnared in the circumstances. They stand in the truth. Have you ever noticed when you stand in your truth, nobody can sway you or question you or move you from that place? When you know something, you know it. It's as if you've got that super sticking power. And I first noticed this for myself a long time ago in a self-help workshop that I was taking. And our assignment was to develop a personal statement or affirmation of purpose. What is your purpose? And when we had this personal statement ready, we would raise our hands and the facilitator would come around and hear us state our truth. That is, be witness to it. So, I was toying with using a word play on my name, like Mary. Okay, what could that be? So, eat, drink, and be merry, or a merry heart doeth good like medicine, or something like that. So I was kind of toying with that. And I said, okay, I'm ready. And then it came around to me and I stated my affirmation. They said, no, that's not it. And I was like, what do you mean that's not it? That's my name. That's my affirmation. And they said, no, that's not it. And there were two of them, so there was more than I was. So I said, okay. And I went back to work on it. And I worked on it a little bit more. And then, that statement came to me. And I called him back and I said, this is my new affirmation. And this time, it was very clear that it was my truth. Nobody could have told me it was not. Even if they had said that's not it, I wouldn't have believed them. But the first time when it wasn't, I believed them. But the second time, I stood in that truth. And what I realized much later was that if I could be dissuaded, then it was not my truth. If I could be dissuaded, it was not my truth. That's what I learned. And hence our affirmation today, I stand in the power and wholeness of spirit that I am. And this statement exemplifies the wise warrior, already anchored in peace and poise, and focused on what needs to happen without needing to fight. Because you simply know. We recognize that all is one already. And so what the wise warrior does is bring that centering into their lives. And what if we made that our personal crusade? What if we made that standing in truth, our personal crusade, being authentic. We hear a lot about being authentic. It's the popular thing to do these days, to be authentic. What if we could all be knights, like Circumference? And yeah, I'm sure he's pretty much the person who built King Arthur's Round Table, or Surprise, or Certain, Circle. What about being a surfer? That's really surreal. I'm not sure I could surmount that, but as a minister, it's part of my sermon. And actually, my favorite holiday song, one about the medieval warriors, one of them doesn't talk, the other one's an armor is falling apart. That is Silent Night, Holy Night. So here's the deal. By whatever name, nothing is greater than the infinite presence. We can give it any name. We can play with the name. But when we stand in our truth, when we enlist in as wise warriors, there is no opposing power. There's one power, one presence, one infinite source, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. Everything I need to know. Ernest Holmes tells us that one alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. So this idea of speaking truth to power is often used to indicate a commitment to stand up to those we perceive as more powerful than us. Well, in truth, no one is more or less powerful. We're all equally the infinite in expression. What would your life be like if you believed that? See, the only difference is a level of awareness. Do we know it? We build certain people or organizations into the enemy or the other. And in doing so, we give them power over us, power that has no truth in itself. That power isn't real. But when we give away our own power, which, actually is impossible to do, as we are always spirit in form, but sometimes we feel powerless. And in reality, people who seem powerful are no more or less spirit than we are. Oh my gosh, take that in. People who seem more powerful are no more or less spirit than we are. That works two ways, doesn't it? See, organizations that seem powerful and immovable are made up of individual people who, again, are spirit in form. Infinite spirit is always everywhere present. Remember when Reverend Rainbow talked about the movie Monsters, Inc.? The monsters turn out not to be really monsters. In fact, they're very helpful. Which kind of brings to mind a dream I had last night. I dreamt that something bad was happening. I could see my front door was open and there was danger lurking. And then in my dream, a Dalmatian appeared. And I recognized this as my beloved dog Star, who left us over 20 years ago. And in that moment, I realized that the dream was not real because I knew she was gone from this plane. And so this couldn't be happening in my life at this moment. It was nothing more than an appearance, a dream, and I was no longer frightened. What a gift. So we have to look away from the dream, from the smoke and mirrors of what seems to be, and recenter in truth. Oh, that sounds so easy, doesn't it? Recenter in truth. See, when we attempt to fight outside circumstance, we give those circumstances power in our mind. Ernest Holmes tells us the practitioner does not fight evil, they know there is no evil. And when we engage with fighting with the outer, we're caught up in this separation, and we've really lost faith in that infinite oneness. And This doesn't mean that we sit on our prayer chairs and do nothing. In fact, it means we first gain the high perspective so that we can be most effective in our actions. We recently reinstituted the High Watch for our Sunday gatherings. And thank you this week to Alexandra for holding the High Watch. She is doing that in her own place, at her own time, right here, right now. I know that she's there because I just texted her. So, what is this thing we call the High Watch? Well, I like to think of it as a practice of staying in intentional consciousness about or around something specific. Actually, I think this high watch term comes from old sailors when they were up. Well, I don't know if they were old sailors. Anyhow, it's an old term from sailors who were watching from the crow's nest or something like that. Okay, so um, Douglas Botoff, a Unity minister, gives us some history. He said, this phrase, keeping the high watch, was first presented to me through the works of Emma Curtis Hopkins. We all know Emma Curtis Hopkins, known as the teacher of teachers. And she had a major impact on a wide range of New Thought leaders, including Ernest Holmes, the Fillmores, Emily Cady. Anyhow, high watch, as Hopkins used the term, concerns that swift, subtle faculty possessed by us all where we look whithersoever we will, to the deity be ever beholding us, or to the dust beneath, without the aid of our physical eyes. Now, it's not easy to read Emma Curtis Hopkins. I'm going to say that one more time. This is what she says. High watch concerns that swift, subtle faculty possessed by us all, infinite, whereby we look whithersoever we will. Wherever we look, there is God. There's no spot where God is not, without the aid of our physical eyes. So keeping the high watch is holding fast to the truth of one power, one presence, one, everywhere present, at work in our lives. And this is not easy with perpetual media bombardment and full immersion in the body-centered, material-grounded culture. Our vision is, well, easily enticed away from the notion of a single power. And yet, knowing this one power is our means of finding inner peace. Whew, inner peace in an ever-changing world. So, keeping the high watch is not standing on tiptoes, straining to see some great good farther on down the line. It's closing our outer eyes for a time and allowing the illumination of the soul to make itself known. As Hopkins writes, she says this: the farther toward the celestial zenith we send our limitless eye, the deeper is our assurance of our own divine origin and transcendent selfhood. For truly, the highest is the nearest, most distant, yet most present. So you and I are perfectly placed to keep the high watch. Nothing has to change except the focus of attention, holding the truth. There's one power, one presence, God, the good at work in our life. This is the key to accomplishing that peace of mind, that genuine letting go, knowing all is well. In his monthly column in the Science Mind magazine, this was in January 2014, Jesse Jennings wrote this. He said, this lofty expression means to stay spiritually awake and alert, watching over one's thoughts in order to focus the attention on God as one's good. He says it's drawn from the practice of placing lookouts on the city walls to spot intruders, and also the work of shepherds keeping watch over their flocks from hillsides. Both sentries and shepherds have very lonely tasks, and boredom can set in and the mind wander. So they're being praised for staying vigilant and true to the purpose of their assignments. Oh my gosh, boredom sets in, the mind wanders. This kind of sounds like meditation, especially in the early days. How long do I have to sit here? It's only been 2 minutes. I'm going for 5 today. You get bored and your mind goes, oh, what am I doing after this? Oh, what did that person say to me? What did they So the mind wanders. And so you could this high watch is kind of like a vigil. Most people understand the idea of a vigil, and you stand with something. In any case, the purpose of the practitioner presence is to provide a container of the highest consciousness through treatment and meditation, and to bring us into a greater awareness of this universal presence in every activity, every aspect. And when someone who's adept at treatment and other spiritual practices is able to hold that practitioner consciousness, that's why we call it a practice. We practice, practice, practice. So when it comes to the time when this is important, we've already developed that practitioner conscious. We are used to holding the high watch. So holding the high watch means that you prayerfully, meditatively withdraw your attention from whatever is going around in this world of effect and turn to the cause, turn to the truth. And this isn't always easy to do, because this is what happens. We encounter people. I don't know if this happens to you. It just happens to me. When I encounter people, circumstances, organizations, oh my gosh, who upset us, who upset me, then I realize it's important to step back and recognize that below the surface, we are one. I think about it as remembering. That is, I remember. I put the members back together. Because what I've learned is we all want the same thing. But at the bottom, we all want love. Now, we have different ways of trying to get it, but I think it's what we want. And this is because we all want to go home. We want to return to that infinite presence. The infinite presence is love, and we simply want to be in alignment with it, no matter how distorted our method is. At the core of most myths is the belief that I am separate from life. Tom Johnson, Reverend Tom Johnson, he was a minister in California. He says this, he said, what you're living is really what you believe. Whatever we're seeking, we cannot have anyway, because the law of mind keeps taking it from us, that which we are seeking. Because we're seeking it, we can only have what we are. So what if we lived our lives? What if we lived our lives no longer looking at ourselves or others as wrong or misguided or just stupid? Instead, what would happen if we see ourselves if we see our people and ourselves like we are, doing the best we can in this moment to live and to love? So first we have to be conscious. We have to be in consciousness with the infinite, not having our attention pulled by appearances, people, organizations, circumstances. Do not be moved from the truth. Oh gosh, and what if I don't know what the truth is? Well, then I find out. I read, I study, I contemplate, go deep into that first cause and allow nature to flow through us. See, knowledge can begin to pop open our closed mental prison, but knowing is different. Knowing, integration of that knowledge allows us to walk our talk. It's like I know something or I know about. So unless I've had that true experience, I really don't know it. I know about it. So there's two practices we can use to support us in opening to this. And the first I mentioned is meditation. Real deep meditation, where the mind is quieted enough so that we can hear our true self. And it's not an overnight process, trust me. It takes dedication. because that ego doesn't really want to give up. And yet, over time, I've seen progress. So, the second process is compassionate listening. I'm working on this one. Listening from curiosity, not the desire to be right. Listening from our heart, not our position. Listening with wonder, not the need to win an argument or prove somebody else wrong. And what I know is that compassionate listening begins with me. We all get hooked from time to time. Listening to ourselves helps us see where the real hook lies. Winston Churchill said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." So as we create a habit of compassionate listening to ourselves, then we find it easier to extend this practice to others. So when we recognize that life is a mirror, then the first thing to do is not wrestle with the mirror, we know this, but change the source of the reflection. See, we're not even perceiving the mirror clearly. We're looking through our own filters. And so this then is our journey to wake up enough to actually experience reality. And before we can change the world out there, we need to understand what the world out there is. But it's so much more comfortable to stay in my rightness than going a step back, admitting that my perception may not be accurate. So we need to see that circumstance is not necessarily the truth. Once we are alone in consciousness with the infinite, we're tapped into a greater power than we are. And we may not know the how of creating a better world, but it's not ours to know how. We declare what? We align with the nature of the divine, that is love, life, light, wisdom, power, peace, beauty, and joy, and become willing to let it express through us. So let's do that just right now. Let's allow that presence, that power to express through us, that beauty, that truth, that wisdom. And so as I go within, I invite you to join me. Eyes open, eyes closed. In whatever position you find yourselves, it is perfect, just right here. Because we come into the knowing of the truth, knowing that as we align with that one, as if we could ever be out of alignment, we step into the knowing. We know more than we think. Everything we need is available. And so without a shadow of a doubt, I stand in the truth that there is a power, there is a presence, there is an infinite source everywhere. And you can't talk me out of that because I feel it. I know it. I stand in this truth that we are one. And so as I speak truth to that circumstance, I simply allow anything that seems out of that divine alignment to simply dissolve and dissipate. I allow the stress around that to simply relax, letting go, allowing that openness to be a vessel for spirit. And as I do, what I recognize is love. Love is all there is, everywhere present. And I know this love manifests in perfect right relationships. I know that as families come together, as people go in and out of relationship with each other and with themselves, there's only one love. That is the love of divine spirit. And I know this love of divine spirit has created us in its image and likeness and given us this creative energy. And we display it at work, we display it in our creativity, we display it in the words we speak. And so I know that this divine creative expression everywhere present So I know love, I know divine creative expression, and I know wholeness. I know that each person is that infinite in physical form, and as such is perfect, whole, and complete. That there is a divine pattern for this temple of spirit. And so each cell in every body knows how to align with that and simply does so in this moment, creating a wonderful healing effect. And so knowing love, knowing creative expression, and knowing wholeness, I speak this word also for prosperity, for abundance. I know that this is an abundant universe. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And knowing this abundance is everywhere present, knowing that this abundance operates on the law of circulation and that law of giving, using, receiving, that law of receiving, using, giving. It is all one. And so in this moment, I recognize that divine as the truth. I stand in this, knowing love, knowing creative expression, knowing wholeness, knowing abundance. And so I give thanks. Our spiritual practice of gratitude is absolutely, it is what? It is a joy to be in gratitude. And so I let it be. I just enjoy it. I let it be. I invite you to join me as I release this word into the law, knowing that it has already said yes. And so I let it be. And so it is.